Thank you, Mr. Farabee. Let's go ahead and begin this morning. And before I get into my questions, the letter that I mentioned in my opening statement that I, along with 18 other senators, sent to the President on February 24th. Have both of you seen that letter?
Yes.
Yes.
And if you, recognizing that you have seen it, do you know where we are with a response to that inquiry? As you know, there were three very specific questions that we had outlined. Are you, your respective agencies, working on a written response to our letter?
I do not know the status.
Mr. Farabee?
I do not know the status either.
Have you been asked for input to the letter to respond to those questions?
I have not as yet.
I had not as yet either.
Okay, well, this is important for us to, again, exercise the level of oversight that I think is important. And I would like to think that the President, or whether it's CEQ who's drafting the response, that they would certainly seek input from the agencies that are tasked with implementing this memorandum. So hopefully from what we get with the hearing this morning, we will see greater commitment to a response here. What extent, and I'll begin with you, Mr. Bean, as you're speaking on behalf of Department of Interior, to what extent do the agency's legal authorities prohibit or modify the application of the principles and mandates outlined in this presidential memorandum? That's actually one of the direct questions that we included in that letter.
Yes, the policy, the memorandum is quite clear, I think, that in Section 1, its purposes are to be accomplished consistent with existing missions and legal authorities. In Section 5 of the memorandum, it states that it is not intended to supersede existing laws and shall be implemented consistent with applicable law. So I think the answer is that it does not change, it is not intended to change any legal authority that any Interior Department or other agencies have.
So given the fact that you've got differing legal authorities of the agencies, how does this memorandum result in these consistent standards and guidance, while at the same time giving what you're referring to as right-tailored approaches? And I'll further clarify my question here, because what the concern has been is that different agencies have differing interpretations, not only for definitions of words, but for standards and guidance. And so what the aim of this memorandum is to do is to lead to policies that are clear, work similarly across agencies, and are implemented consistently across agencies. How do you do that if you have differing legal authorities, different interpretations? How do you make that work?
Happy to offer an answer to that, Senator. I think the answer is that each agency can follow a set of general principles that are consistent across agencies. For example, the preference given to advanced compensation. From experience over the last several decades, it's quite clear that mitigation efforts don't always succeed. They sometimes fail. And the advantage of mitigation banking, for example, is that it ensures successful mitigation prior to impacts being authorized. So to the extent agencies have the authority to favor advanced mitigation, this policy encourages them to use that authority. The policy also makes clear that there should be equal standards or comparable standards for various forms of mitigation. What I mean by that is as follows. When mitigation is required, there are typically at least three ways it can be addressed. The permittee or developer can carry out mitigation activities him or herself, or the permittee or developer can purchase credits from a mitigation bank, or can make a contribution to what is known as an in lieu fee fund. But the point is that whichever method is chosen, the standards should be the same so that there's a level playing field. So that's a principle that is reflected in this presidential memorandum as well.
And are the standards the same between what BLM applies versus what Forest Service applies?
I can't speak as to the Forest Service. I would say within the Interior Department, the effort is to have similar principles guide mitigation decisions for all interior agencies, whether it's Fish and Wildlife Service, BLM, or others.
Well, I know that that's the design of the memorandum. My 5 minutes are up, and I want to press further in this because I think this is exactly our problem. It looks good on paper, but convince me how the application actually comes to bear. Senator Cantwell.